G'day guys, we finally have the index for World Eaters in our hands, so let's have a look at what these blood-soaked maniacs can do in 10th edition Warhammer 40k.
Look for the blood god.
Alright, next up we have the World Eaters Terminators. Now these guys took a really interesting side grade in the edition change. They became significantly tougher now. These guys are coming in with a 2-up armor save, they're coming in with a 4-up invulnerable save, and importantly they are now toughness 5, which means these guys are significantly tougher just on their data sheet. They also gained access to a neg1 damage stratagem, which means that those 3 wound models get a lot of utility out of that, because 2 damage shots now take 3 shots to kill you, and 3 damage shots now take 2 shots to kill you. So really, it's only when you're dealing with 4 damage weapons or higher that these guys really worry. And even in those situations, you can put a 6-up feel no pain on them. So if they hit you with a 4 damage weapon, you're going to remove one of those by making it into a 3 damage, and then when you roll those 3 feel no pain saves, you've actually got a 50-50 chance of having a 6 in there, which is going to mean that that 4 damage shot failed to kill that Terminator. So these guys are really interesting and they're way tougher than they were in the previous edition. However, their damage output I find quite unimpressive. Their shooting is obviously quite lackluster being world hitters. They're just going in with, combi bolters which are hitting on 4s and you don't have a massive amount of ways to get reroll hits on them. They're doing mortal wounds on 4+ against infantry, which is really cool, but they don't have a massive number of shots and you don't have any really interesting ways of getting rerolls to wound in shooting with them. So there's nothing particularly interesting in their shooting, and even in their melee, they don't have anything above damage 2, and there's so many things in the game now that have the ability to have neg 1 damage, which means even into those targets, you're going to be half incoming damage. So some really, really disappointing combat, and also their unique ability is basically when this unit, when they have suffered casualties, they get a little bit better. And when they've suffered a lot of casualties, they get a lot better in that they get reroll 1s to wound if they're below starting strength, and they get reroll all wounds if they're like below half starting strength. So the problem with those sorts of mechanics is it's kind of a way of going, okay, I'm losing because I'm getting killed, but now I get a little bit stronger. And those types of unique abilities are generally outperformed by ones where you get reroll hits or wounds against targets that have not taken casualties. You want to be able to increase your damage output against full target things, or whilst you're at full strength, you want to have increased damage output. Having increased damage output after you've taken damage is kind of a concession at that point, in my opinion at least. So I think these guys are somewhat disappointing. Even their things like the Chain Fist, which used to be considered an anti-vehicle weapon, and they used to do really, really well, being able to go 3 damage, being able to use the Red Butcher's stratagem to make it 4 damage, meant that these guys were going in and absolutely mincing vehicles. Now I fear that these guys are going to hit vehicles like a standard Rhino and they're probably going to bounce. They're probably going to do very little damage to it. So that concerns me a little bit. They are going to do great into your hordes of infantry, even hordes of like intercessors or space marines of that nature. They're going to do great work there, but I feel like that's a role that can be just as easily filled by Khorne Berserkers. So unless you're looking for a really tough anvil of a unit whose priority is just being tough, then the Berserkers are definitely something you want to look at. But if you're looking for something that's going to be doing damage, then you want to look elsewhere, in my opinion. Depending on the points costs, of course. If these guys are relatively cheap, then hell yeah, you'll probably take them. But I get the sense that these guys are probably going to be twice as expensive as Khorne Berserkers, and I would rather 2 Berserkers over 1 Terminator almost any day. So that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below.
Look for the blood god.
suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.